Hello, welcome to the Zermed Show. I'm your host, Dr. Braha. On the show, we will feature local physicians and healthcare leaders who are experts in their respective fields and who will share their experiences and wisdom with us. We cover a broad range of health topics on the show, and today we have Dr. M.Seigel, Chairman, Department of Pediatrics and Director of Adolescent Medicine at South Brooklyn Health. Dr. Seigel, it's an honor to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk about pediatrics today, which I'm sure our viewers are interested in. Both moms and dads, grandparents, and our young viewers out there will hopefully learn a lot about pediatrics today from you. It's really great to have the chairman of a pediatric division at a hospital with us. So before we delve into pediatric health, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you end up here at South Brooklyn Health? And how did you decide to become a pediatrician?
Well, first, thank you for inviting me. This is very exciting. Very simply, when I was 6, I was a fairly sick child, and I decided I wanted to be a pediatrician just like my pediatrician. As I got older and went to college and medical school, pediatrics attracted me because it's about prevention. It's about keeping kids healthy and preventing diseases. So that's my specialty.
And how did you end up in Brooklyn? Are you from Brooklyn? Or...
Well, originally from Brooklyn, grew up on Long Island and came back to Brooklyn to train and never left. Been here for 34 years and very, very happy to be working at South Brooklyn Health.
So Brooklyn born and bred here and now giving back to the community. You mentioned preventative care with pediatrics, and yes, we're starting with the human body at a young age and hopefully having a huge impact on a child's health. It starts with mom and dad as they're raising baby and as they move through their years. Till what age do you take care of children? When is it considered that you're no longer a pediatric patient?
Well, I'm an adolescent specialist, so I actually take care of patients into their 20s. My oldest patient is probably mid-20s, but most pediatricians take care of pediatric patients up until 21, 22.
So from when we're born up into our early 20s even. So for our viewers today, you might be their doctor for 20 some odd years, helping with their health and preventative health, which is what we should talk about first today. From the minute we're born, preventative health seems to start. We get vaccinated. We are given certain treatments to prevent certain disorders from the minute we come out of the womb. Why don't you start with some of the vaccine sort of preventative health care that our viewers and the children and parents should know about starting from birth?
Well, depending on what age your child is, we'll determine what vaccines we give when they come to a pediatrician's office. It's about preventing diseases. So many of the diseases that we give vaccines for, we haven't seen in quite a while in the United States, which is a wonderful thing. Whether it's tetanus, whether it's pertussis, measles, mumps, chickenpox, we want to make sure that kids are healthy throughout the lifespan.
But for our viewers, the reason we aren't seeing many of these is simply because of doctors like you eradicating this disease with vaccination.
Absolutely. And in fact, recently, we've seen an uptick in certain communities that have decided, well, we're not going to immunize our children. And because of that, those diseases have come back. So we've got to make sure that immunizations are part and parcel and part of all of our preventive healthcare visits.
It's pretty good evidence to us that communities where the vaccination rates are high do better than those where the vaccination rates are low.
Absolutely. There's no question about that.
So proof that these work, they're safe, and seeing a pediatrician can help keep your child updated to the current guidelines.
Absolutely.
And these are preventative diseases. It's a shame for somebody to come down with some of these diseases like measles, for example, which we can be vaccinated for and prevent some of the terrible sequelae of. There's other things that we do in medicine, especially in pediatrics, to keep children up to date on their health and preventative services. Let's talk about vision and some other things that you do in your clinic to help keep children and adolescents
Sure.
healthy.
And this is a perfect time of year. As school is ending, this is the time to get into your pediatrician's office. Make sure that your kids' immunizations are up to date. Make sure that they've had their checkups and make sure their vision and hearing are on track. Make sure that their development, their psychological development, their emotional development, their height, their weight, their blood pressure, make sure that we prevent the diseases. And as school is ending, this is a perfect time to do it.
Yeah, as we come out of school, children mature throughout the year. some children may lag, and you can detect on this if the growth is behind or if mental status is an issue. So it's really like getting ready for a summer road trip. You want to get your tune-up, change your oil, bring your kids in after school to get ready for summer.
That's a perfect analogy. You know, in October, November, I make sure that my snow shovels are around. I make sure I have the ice melt. So I always talk about getting everything ready for the winter. This is the time to get kids ready for the summer. And that means see your pediatrician, get that summer tune-up, so to speak.
As we move into summer, we talk about some other health care. Let's talk about dental health. Oral care is very important, brushing our teeth, checking for cavities. We know from our adult population that poor dental health can correlate with cardiac disease in older people. What about children?
We know that one of the great predictors of health in children is whether a child has seen their dentist, whether it's a pediatric dentist or an adult dentist, at least once a year. So that's the current recommendation, that every child, as soon as they develop their first tooth, sees a dentist.
And in the pediatric office, I know you have physicians. What about, is there dental care available to children here at South Brooklyn Health or nearby?
So here at South Brooklyn Health, we have actually a very large dental program, but even in my primary care ambulatory care center here at South Brooklyn, we do dental screenings while a child is here for their preventive health care.
So it's a one-stop shop.
One-stop
care, you can get your dental care. So these are important tips for our viewers, our grandparents, our parents, whoever's taking care of the children in the family, to get that summer tune-up ready for the children before they head off to camp or their summer activities. Let's sort of shift into summer care, sort of. Not preventative care, but summer care. Summer is a unique time of the year, especially here in New York. We get a couple of months of sun, heat. Kids are out playing. There's exposure issues. Some of the dangers of summer. Let's go into how to prevent some of the accidents or, the risks of sitting in the sun too long or swimming. Some measures that you might suggest to our viewers today as they get their children ready for summer.
It's very important for all of our children to stay hydrated, not just in the summer, but all year long. But in the summer, as the temperature goes up, we sweat more. So we've got to make sure that our kids are hydrated. We've got to make sure that they're wearing sunscreen and know how to apply it. If they're young, please make sure that we put the sunscreen on them, and that means not spraying it in their face and putting it on our hands and then putting it on their face, keeping that away from their mouth. It's also important to think about bug spray, and that's something that nobody likes, but we really don't like those mosquito bites much worse than the bug spray. So make sure they're hydrated, make sure the bug spray is put on, and make sure the sunscreen is put on whenever kids are outside.
Let's go over a couple of those points because sounds like advice for adults and children right there. Hydration. Fluids that you recommend. I know any fluid is good fluid when children are fickle and they don't want to drink much, and whatever they'll take is good, but there's certainly things that are better than others, obviously avoiding caffeinated or sodas. But what do you recommend as a good hydrating fluid for you?
Water. Don't say that all fluid is good. We know that sugary substances are not necessary. They're just wasted calories. And actually, there are some data to suggest that that may actually attract the mosquitoes. So stay away from those sugar products.
So enjoy a good cold glass of water is the best hydration.
Absolutely.
Children and adults, I agree. Sunscreen, is there a number that you recommend? There's all these different numbers in the pharmacy, 15, 30, 45, 8,000. They go all over the map here with, what do you recommend to your children?
Good data that really shows anything higher than SPF, sun protective factor of 15 or above is probably good enough. You don't need 45. There's no data that suggests that's better than 30. So make sure it's 15 and up. Make sure that very young children under 6 months of age, they shouldn't be in the sun at all. You can put some sunscreen on it, but keep them out of the sun.
So no tan lines for...
No tan lines.
Okay.
Under that diaper.
I've heard of some tan lines. I've never heard of diaper lines, but that's cute. I like that. If your child is under 6 months old, keep them in the shade. That's really good advice. Children get warm. They want to run into the ocean. They want to run into a pool. Not everyone knows how to swim. There's some really good safety points you have for us on swimming. Why don't we go over how parents should approach swimming with their children, adolescents, people who may have no experience or even good experience? What are your tips for the viewers out there today?
I'm always amazed at how few of my patients here, so close to the Coney Island boardwalk and the beach, actually know how to swim. So tip number one, no one should ever be swimming by themselves. I don't care how old you are and how well you think you swim. They shouldn't ever be swimming by themselves. Second is, if you're a parent, this is the summertime. This is the time to get your child enrolled in swimming lessons. And there's some wonderful Ys and places that kids can get low cost or even free swimming lessons. So think about, this could be the summer that your child learns how to swim. And then the third is very, very important. And that is, as I said, always swim with somebody. Make sure that kids have swimming lessons. And the third is, kids should never be swimming anywhere at the beach without a lifeguard on duty.
Yeah, great advice. There are tons of summer programs I see already advertised where you can learn how to swim. And it's an important skill. We live by the water here, really important. The lifeguards, they're there to help us, but they're not there 24/7. The kids should not be going into the beach without having support around with their parents and especially a lifeguard.
Nor should adults.
Right. No one should. And these accidents can happen with the best of swimmers. We see the riptides that can occur, especially around storms, where even trained swimmers can get caught up and drift out. So they're not only at the beach this summer, they're running around. So they've left the beach, they've gotten home, they're at a barbecue, they're running around the streets. You're sending your kid off to run to the park. There's more liberty in the summer, maybe. There's more freedom, but that also results in some risk with our children out in the streets. And street safety, crossing streets, bicycle riding, helmets, things like that. From a seasoned pediatrician, what do you tell your patients about street safety here in Brooklyn, especially?
Yeah, I'd like to say that I'm talking to them and reminding them, but unfortunately, we as parents don't get this across to our children often enough. It's always cross at a crosswalk, never cross in between cars. And let me tell you, no matter where you are in a city, kids do that all the time. The ball rolls into the street, and kids want to get the ball, and they forget that there are cars. Very, very important that nobody should be on a bicycle, whether you're a child, an adolescent, or an adult, without protecting their head, which means they've got to wear a bicycle helmet. People are rollerblading, they're roller skating, same thing. Wear a helmet. So while you're out having fun, also remember to prevent those injuries.
Yeah, I used to always tell my kids and other people that if you're going faster than you can walk, you probably need to have a helmet on, and think about that. And the advice with the rolling ball, you can always replace a ball. Your life, your body, your limbs. Don't chase. For our viewers, don't chase that ball rolling into the street. You'll always get it back. That car may not see it. That's really great advice. Some of the ways we can prevent our kids from doing crazy things in the summer is getting them into a program where they're with other children and maybe supervised by an adult while we're at work and you're at work. In order to have the kids maybe in more of a structured area like day camps. There's a lot around the city. What's your take on this? What's your advice to parents and children? How do you feel about day camps and these summer programs that are available out there?
We are so lucky to be in the city that has so much to offer for our children. It's not only respite for parents, because let's face it, as much as you may love your child, you don't really want to have them home and bored for 6, 7, 8 hours. So camps are a wonderful opportunity for kids to learn, kids to socialize. Kids actually grow up so much better when they go to camp. And study after study has shown that kids who go to day camp early actually lose less than children who do nothing during the summer when they go back to school. They stay up on all of their, maybe not math, right? But so much of the learning that goes on in the summer is wonderful. So we're very, very lucky to have those opportunities here in New York City.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's socialization, being around other children instead of being isolated in a room staring at a screen, definitely helps. And that's good data to know for our parents watching, that it's not just to get them out of the house, but to keep the mind working quite well. There are days that are hot where it may be too hot even to go to the beach. We can see some really unseasonably hot weather here in New York City. And for our viewers, that may not be the right time for your children to start, running down to the park and spending 2 hours in 110-degree weather. What are your recommendations about heat and prevention of heat issues and health diseases that can occur in heat waves? And what can we think about doing instead of being outside during these terrible heat waves that we might get here in New York?
Well, one thing to think about is go someplace that's cool. And it doesn't have to be a cooling center, right? It can be the library. It can be a museum. This can be a fun activity for you and your child to go to a place that they don't normally go to. It amazes me how many of my patients only read on their phones or only read on their iPads. But taking them to a library, getting them a library card, checking out that book can be such a wonderful experience, not only for the child and the parent, but also it's nice, it's cool, it's quiet. Same thing with museums. It piques children's curiosity and it lets them see a different part of the world, different part of Brooklyn.
Yeah, an excuse to be indoors during the summer.
Absolutely.
Is that terrible heat that we might get here. For our viewers, there are some diseases like heat stroke and exhaustion and health emergencies that can occur in the heat. Just some quick tips maybe. What should we look out for in children or even adolescents that might be a sign they've been out too long or even they need to come to the ER because they may have some heat emergency?
Yeah. In children, one of the first and most serious signs is they start getting nauseous. They're nauseous, they may start vomiting, they may have what we call mental status changes. They're behaving properly. When that happens, it's very often the sign that your child has been out in the sun too long. And just like adults, that is an emergency. So bring them in, make sure they're hydrated. If it gets worse, you need to come to the emergency room.
Right, you need to cooling measures, intravenous fluids.
Yes.
Checking the blood work.
Right. We'll do that. We'll take care of that, but you got to bring them in.
Yeah.
The first thing to do, though, is to prevent heat stroke, prevent that hyperthermia, high body temperature. Make sure they're hydrated, make sure they stay out of the sun, and make sure that they are not getting overheated.
Let's move on to some other topics here during the summer, which the children watching today may not be excited to hear. We talked about fun in the sun. We talked about fun in the water, fun at camp, how to prevent some of these accidents by wearing helmets and not running out to the street. And children aren't going to want to hear about how do we study during the summer? How do we do some schoolwork to keep our brains active? Because the brain is like any other muscle. If you don't use it, it starts to lose it a little bit. So what are your suggestions to the children watching today and the parents and how to stimulate their children to stay up to par on their academics during the few summer months that we get?
Well, one of the things I like to talk to parents about is the fact that summer school is not a punishment. Summer may be a great opportunity to give a little extra help to your child. Maybe he or she isn't doing well in English or math or social studies. And again, in New York City, we have the opportunity to enroll our children in summer school. Again, not as a punishment, not because they did poorly this year, but maybe they need that extra help. So think about summer school, summer programs, even if they're half a day or, just a few days a week, to give them that extra boost. If they've been struggling during the school year, the summer might be the time to give them that extra help that they
sort of an extra boost going into the upcoming year. So
correct.
Maybe we're falling off the mark a little bit as you exited the school year, getting that extra education in the summer to get a boost. I know sometimes when I was in school, they'd come back from summer school knowing way more than all of us, and the rest of us were jealous that they were ahead of the game. So
that's true.
That's nice advice. Older children who are watching, or adolescents, I guess that's the right term. I don't want to offend them. Teenagers, they're considering work this summer. They're considering maybe volunteer activities. I already have students in my office who want to see what medicine is like. Mm-hmm. What kind of ideas do you have for the older children out there who are maybe looking for some more life experience?
Yeah. So many of my patients are looking to get paid. The truth is we've got an unemployment problem in this country. There aren't a lot of jobs out there. And the jobs that are out there, they're really not looking for kids, at 16 or 17. And it really is not common for a 12 or 13 or 14-year-old to get a wonderful paying job. But one thing that we can instill in all of our children and adolescents is the opportunity to volunteer, whether it's volunteer at a hospital, at a nursing home, maybe at an animal shelter. Find out what your child really loves to do and what they would like to do. And let them fantasize a little bit. Maybe it's, I'd like to see what a doctor does or a nurse does, or I'd like to see how dogs and cats are adopted. So let them think about it and then look for those volunteer activities. It can be very rewarding for that adolescent and very rewarding for the people who work in that industry.
Yeah, there are plenty of volunteer opportunities available, especially in our huge city here. That's how I started. I always thought I was going to be a doctor, but one summer, I think I was 12 or 13, I volunteered at my local hospital, and one thing led to another where I was able to shadow surgeons and radiologists and really get a good idea of medicine in my teenage years. I like the idea of the animals and maybe helping out with the shelters, volunteering there. There are plenty of websites I know about, and you've probably seen some of your patients go on to. In the arts, there's volunteer opportunities, to museums, plenty of culture out there. And volunteering is a great way to get your foot in the door for a future career, or at least to figure out if you like it or if you don't like it so much. We talked a lot about health issues related to weather, and we recently had this phenomenon in New York City with some really, really poor air quality. In fact, the worst air quality in the world at one point the other day, with the fires and the smoke from Canada spreading here. I know that wearing a mask sort of applies to all of us to protect some special situations for children, maybe asthma, allergies. What advice do you have for the viewers today if that were to happen again to us this coming summer?
And I think if that happens again, you're going to be doing what I've been doing for the last 3 days. If I'm outside, I'm wearing a quality mask. If your child has asthma or any breathing problems, if your child has any chronic lung diseases, they should be wearing a mask, not every single day like we did during COVID, and not necessarily indoors like we did during the pandemic. But certainly if you're living in a house where you don't have air conditioning and the windows are going to be open, they're going to have to be shut when the air quality is very poor. If you've got air conditioning, make sure that fan is running and that we're not taking the bad air from outside and just bringing it in. Make sure that the vent is closed. But again, if they're outside, make sure they're wearing a mask. No child should be wearing a mask if they're under 6 months of age, because that actually can be hazardous. So if the air quality gets that bad, again, that 6 month is really important. Don't put them out in the sun. Don't take them outside. You can't really take care of them outside in poor conditions.
And don't put a mask on.
And don't put a mask
6
on.
months old.
Correct.
What about children or adults watching today who have a history of bronchial disease, of asthma, reactive airway? A good time to come in and see you, a good time to see their pulmonologist, get a tune-up before summer.
I think this is a perfect time to see your doctor. If you can get in, this is a good time because kids won't miss school. If you've got the day off and you're a little older and you're working, and many of my adolescents are working or will be starting to work in July, this is June. This is the time to
get in there, get a checkup.
Absolutely.
Get checked
before
out.
You miss that day.
Before the next air emergency that we all happen to go through. We talked about all this nice sort of healthcare of summer, the nice part of summer, work, education. There are going to be emergencies. There are going to be times where bad things do happen. Tell us a little bit about emergency care when it comes to pediatrics, especially here at South Brooklyn Health a bit. We have a new hospital here, a new facility, and tell us a bit about the emergency care for pediatrics.
Well, our pediatric emergency room is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's fully staffed with specially trained nurses and pediatric emergency medicine physicians. So if, God forbid, your child is sick, this is the place for them. We have a new emergency room entrance, which is actually on the second floor, so we don't have to deal with that hurricane. For people who remember Hurricane Sandy, it's on the corner of East 6th Street and Avenue Z. So if people come to the front of the hospital, you won't see it. But if you go to Avenue Z, you can't miss it. And we hope not to see you there. But in the event that all these tips don't work, we're here for you.
And it's a specially trained staff to deal with your population.
Absolutely. It's a separate pediatric emergency room. No adults are not in that emergency room. There's an adult emergency room. And all of our staff are particularly trained and only take care of children.
That's pretty unique. The children are not intermixed with the adults in the emergency room. They have their own separate area. That's really great to know. And good for our viewers in case, God forbid, there is a medical emergency with their child. To come to a place that has a children's emergency room. We're getting into our last few minutes here. I always ask our physicians that come onto the show, what's your advice to someone watching today who may want to go into medicine and become a physician, and specifically maybe even a pediatrician? What advice do you give to the young ones watching today to maybe stimulate or perk them up to be encouraged to come into our field of medicine?
Well, I have to tell you, I had a teacher in junior high school who used to say, if you can dream it, you can do it. And everybody told me growing up that I could never be a doctor, that I couldn't go to college. Nobody in my family had ever gone to college. People told me I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor. But he had a different philosophy. He said, if you dream it, you can do it. All you have to do is let yourself believe that you can do whatever you want to do. And if you work hard enough, I think it can be done. And if you're thinking about it, let's figure out how to help you do it.
Do we have volunteers back at South Brooklyn Health? Have you seen anyone yet coming back to volunteer?
We used to have a huge volunteer program. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, that was closed. But I'm sure now that we have our new hospital open and we're continue to come out of the pandemic, I'm sure we're going to have volunteers very soon.
Same with us, too. We had a drop-off because of the pandemic. But maybe for our viewers who are looking to go into a career in medicine or nursing or EMS or seek out local hospitals, see if they're taking volunteers on to maybe shadow a great doctor like Dr. Seigel here.
We'd love to have you.
So I want to thank you for all this advice. We talked about swimming, make sure we're trained, make sure we went through lessons, make sure there's a lifeguard, always an adult around. We talked about sunscreen, nothing under the age of 6 months, keep them out of the sun. We talked about heat exhaustion, look for nausea, vomiting, changes in mental status, call an ambulance, come to an ER. Vaccination, this is the time of year to make sure you're up to date. Get everything done before we head back to school. And camps, important. We talked about, and you suggested that there's some data that shows it's better for kids to be in a camp in terms of keeping their mind stimulated, maybe keeping them academically up to par going back into school. Any parting words for our viewers today as we enter into our last 30 seconds here?
Don't forget that bug spray. Nobody likes the mosquitoes.
No one likes the mosquitoes. Hopefully they'll stay away this season. They're a tough bug, but we'll fight them. We'll fight them. I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's really been an honor to spend this time with you. And I learned a lot. I'm sure our viewers learned a lot. And hopefully our kids stay safe this summer here in New York City. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you for your interest in the show, your desire to become involved and educated. I invite you to visit our website at www.zermed.com. Check out our tools. Connect with us on social media. You can also call us at 718-510-2103. Please stay well, be safe, and have a great summer, Brooklyn. Be well.